The cracked screen came in wrapped in a paper towel, and the man who handed it to her would not meet her eyes. He stood in the doorway of a kitchen that was not his in a part of town he had spent his whole career avoiding, holding a phone worth more than the rent on this entire house, and he was afraid, not of her, of what he had come to ask. He had driven 40 minutes from the glass tower downtown, where his title was painted in white letters on a frosted door, and he had sat in his car outside for 11 minutes before he made himself walk up the steps. He did not know yet who she was. He only knew that 3 different people, none of whom knew each other, had told him the same thing when his own people had given up. If it can be fixed at all, take it to the woman on Bickford Street. She fixes the ones nobody else can. Her name was Tasha Reed. And for 6 years she had run the entire operation from a folding table pushed up against the kitchen wall under a lamp her son had rewired himself when he was 9. There was no sign out front. There was no website. There was a phone number written on index cards that passed hand to hand through 3 zip codes, and there was a reputation that had grown the slow, honest way, 1 saved screen and 1 rescued photo album at a time. She charged $40 for a job the mall kiosks charged $200 for, and refused half the time. She charged nothing at all when the phone belonged to somebody who clearly could not pay. And she did this so quietly that even the people she helped did not always understand they had been carried. Stay with me, because the man in her doorway did not yet understand what he was standing inside of. None of them did. Not him, not the company whose logo was stamped on the back of the phone he carried, not the city that drove past her house every day on the way to somewhere it considered more important. She was about to become the most necessary person in a story that had not realized it needed her, and she had no idea. What she did know that morning was that her son needed $4,200 for a college deposit by the 1st of August, and it was already the middle of June, and she had $1,100 saved in a coffee can on top of the refrigerator. She knew the exact figure because she counted it on Sunday nights, the way other people went to church. She knew that her late shifts repairing cracked glass and dead batteries brought in maybe $300 in a good week, and that good weeks did not come often enough. She knew that her son, Malik, had been accepted into an engineering program 2 states away on a partial scholarship, and that the word partial was doing a tremendous amount of work, and that she had not yet told him how far she was from closing the gap. He thought she had it handled. She let him think it. That was its own kind of repair, the kind nobody could see. The man cleared his throat. He was tall, heavy in the shoulders the way men get when they have spent 20 years in chairs and conference rooms, with a charcoal suit that had been pressed that morning and a tie he had loosened in the car. Scrote. His name was Gerald Voss, and his business card, had he handed it to her, would have said Regional Manager in the kind of font that costs money. He did not hand it to her. He held out the paper towel instead, and inside it was a phone with a spider of cracks across the face and a back panel that had separated from the frame at one corner, swollen, the way they swell when the battery has begun to fail, in the particular way that frightens people who know what it means. "They told me you might be able to look at it," he said. "I know it's late. I can pay whatever the rate is." Tasha took the phone the way she took every phone, with both hands, gently, the way you take something that matters to the person handing it over, even if it does not matter to you. She turned it under the lamp. She did not say anything for a long moment, and in that moment Gerald Voss felt something he had not felt in a very long time, which was the sensation of being assessed by someone who could not be impressed by the things he was used to impressing people with. She was not looking at his suit, she was looking at the phone, and she was frowning. "This isn't the screen," she said. "I'm sorry, the screen's cracked. Yeah, that's not why you're here, though." She pressed the swollen back panel with her thumb lightly and watched it. "You've got a battery starting to go. This phone's been telling you for weeks. Heat when it charges, dies at 40%, restarts on its own." She looked up at him for the first time. "Am I close?" He stared at her. "How did you—" He started and then stopped, because the honest answer was that 2 of the 3 things she had just described had happened that very morning, and the third had happened on Tuesday, and he had told no one because the phone was not the kind of problem a man in his position was supposed to bring to anyone but the company's own people. And the company's own people had looked at it for 9 minutes and told him to upgrade to the new model and transfer his data and move on with his life. There was data on this phone he could not move on from, though. And that was the part he had not said yet, and the part that had made him sit in his car for 11 minutes, and the part that this story turns on. Let me pull back, because you need to understand the kitchen before you understand what happened in it. Tasha had not set out to fix phones. She had set out at 23 to be an electrical engineer, and she had finished 2 years of the degree before her mother got sick and the money ran out and the choice in front of her stopped being a choice. She came home. She took care of her mother for the 4 years that took, and she had a son in the middle of it whose father proved to be a temporary man, and by the time the dust settled, she was 29, with a child and a mother's medical debt, and exactly nothing of the future she had drawn for herself in a notebook she still had in a drawer. What she had instead was a pair of hands that understood circuits, a stubbornness that had outlasted everything designed to break it, and a kitchen table. The first phone she ever fixed belonged to a neighbor, an older woman named Miss Pearl 2 doors down, whose grandson had sent her a phone full of photographs of a great-grandbaby she had never met in person, and the phone had died and the mall had told Miss Pearl the photos were gone. Tasha took it home. She sat at the kitchen table for 2 nights with a set of jeweler's screwdrivers she had bought for $9 and a soldering iron and the diagrams she found online. And on the 3rd night the screen came alive and the baby's face was still there. Miss Pearl cried. She tried to give Tasha $20 and Tasha would not take it, and the next week Miss Pearl sent her niece with a cracked screen and $40 folded into a card, and that, with no plan behind it whatsoever, was the beginning. She remembered that first repair better than any of the 4,000 that came after. The phone had taken a fall and then a soaking, the worst combination, and the logic board had a film of corrosion across it like frost on a windshield. She had cleaned it under the lamp with a cotton swab and a bottle of alcohol, 1 square millimeter at a time, holding her breath the way her mother used to hold hers, threading a needle. Twice she had been ready to quit. Twice she had thought of Miss Pearl's face at the mall counter, the way the woman had folded the dead phone back into her purse, like a thing she was burying, and Tasha had picked the swab back up. When the baby's face finally loaded at 1 in the morning, blurry and then sharp, a fat brown baby in a yellow onesie laughing at whoever held the camera, Tasha had sat very still in her dark kitchen and understood that she had found the thing she was for. Not the only thing. A true thing, though, and true things are not so common that a person can afford to walk past one. She never advertised. She never needed to. The neighborhood she lived in was the kind of place where the official world did not work very well, where the warranties did not cover the things that actually broke, and the repair counters were 45 minutes away by bus and treated you like a suspect when you got there. Into that gap she stepped quietly, with her $40 fee and her 2-night turnaround and her refusal to ever once make a person feel foolish for the thing they had broken. The grandmothers came first, then their children, then strangers from across the highway who had heard a name and a street, and nothing else. By the time Gerald Voss stood in her doorway, she had repaired, by her own loose count, something north of 4,000 phones, and she had never broken one, and she had never once lost a person's photographs, and she had done all of it under a lamp her 9-year-old had rewired at a table where her son did his homework. In a house she was 4 months behind on. Did you have someone like that growing up? Someone who fixed the thing the official world said could not be fixed and never made you feel small about needing it. Hold on to that thought, because Tasha was about to find out that the official world had been watching her longer than she knew and from higher up than she could have guessed. It's fixable, she told Gerald that first night. The battery I can do. I'd have to order the part. It's a day or two. The screen, same time. 40 for the screen. The battery's a little more, because the part costs more. Call it 90 for both. She set the phone down on the table. Gently, screen up. But I want to ask you something first, because the way you're standing tells me the money isn't the thing you're worried about. He sat down without being invited, in the chair across from her, which was Malik's chair, and he put his hands flat on the table and he told her. There was a voice memo, on the phone. A single voice memo, 91 seconds long, recorded 14 months ago. It was his daughter. She had recorded it the week before she died, 26 years old, in a hospital bed, and it was the last thing he had of her voice, and he had not backed it up because he had spent the first year not able to touch the phone at all. And now the phone was dying, and the company's own people had told him that if the battery failed completely before he transferred the data, there was a real chance the memo would be gone, corrupted, unrecoverable, and he had driven to 3 repair counters in 2 days, and every one of them had said the same careful liability-minded thing, which was that they could not guarantee anything. And one of them, a young man at a kiosk, had said it with a shrug that Gerald had wanted to put his fist through, not because the young man was cruel, but because he was 22 and did not yet know that a shrug can be the cruelest thing in the world to the right person on the wrong day. "I don't care about the phone," Gerald said, and his voice did something it had not done in front of another human being in 14 months. "I care about 91 seconds. Can you save the 91 seconds? Tasha was quiet for a long time. Then she reached across the table, not to him, to the phone, and she picked it up again and held it the way she had held Miss Pearl's 6 years before. "I'm going to tell you the truth, because you came here for the truth, and you've been lied to gently 3 times this week," she said. "I can't promise. Anybody who promises you is selling you something. What I can promise is that I will not let this battery die while it's in my house. I'll pull the memo off first, before I touch anything else. The second I open it up, I'll put it in 3 places, and then I'll fix the phone. She set it down. "The memo I'll save tonight if you leave it with me. The repair you can pick up Thursday tonight," he said. "You can do it tonight." "I can start tonight, saving the file." "Yes. That part I'm not waiting on a part for." She almost smiled. "You should go home, mister. I didn't get your name." "Gerald, you should go home, Gerald. I'll text you when it's safe." He did not go home. He sat in his car outside her house in a neighborhood his company's market reports described in language that would have shamed him if he had read it closely. And at 11:40 that night, his phone buzzed with a text from a number he did not have saved, and it said only this: "It's safe. All 91 seconds. I made you 3 copies. One's already in your email. Check it." She's beautiful. And Gerald Voss, regional manager, sat in his car on Bickford Street and listened to his daughter's voice for the first time in 14 months. And he wept the way men weep when they have been holding it since the funeral. And across town, a single mother went back to her table and ordered a battery and a screen and added $90 to a coffee can that needed $4,200 and did not yet know that the man in the car was about to change the arithmetic of her entire life. Not the way you think, though, and not as fast as he wanted to. Here is what Gerald did, and here is why it took longer than a check. He could have written her a check that night. A man in his position could have written her a check for the whole $4,200 and never felt it, and for about a week that is exactly what he intended to do, and the reason he did not is the reason this story is worth telling. He went home and he played the memo for his wife, and the two of them sat up until 3 in the morning, and somewhere in there, his wife asked him a question that he could not stop thinking about for days afterward. She asked him who else this woman had saved, not how much he should pay her. Who else? So Gerald, who was good at his job in the way that had carried him up 20 years of ladders, did the thing he was good at. He looked into it, quietly. He did not announce himself. He started asking, in the careful way he knew how, about the woman on Bickford Street, and what he found undid him a second time. He found Miss Pearl and the great-grandbaby's photographs. He found a man named Curtis whose entire small landscaping business ran off one phone with a contact list 11 years deep, dropped in a client's pool, brought back from the dead at Tasha's table for $40 when the insurance wanted him to start over from nothing. Curtis had told Gerald, leaning on the tailgate of his truck on a hot afternoon, that the phone had gone into 8 feet of water at the bottom of a job he could not afford to lose, and that he had driven it to Tasha's house in a bag of rice like a fool, and that she had taken one look at it and said the rice was a myth, but bring it in anyway. 3 days later, he had his 11 years of contacts back, every landscaper and every supplier and every customer who had ever called him, and a bill for $40, and when he had tried to pay her $60, she had made exact change out of the coffee can on the refrigerator. She gave me my whole business back for $40, Curtis said, and acted like I'd done her the favor by trusting her with it. He found a teenage girl whose only pictures of a brother she had lost lived on a phone with a shattered board, and who had been told everywhere that they were gone and who got them back. He found a woman fleeing a bad marriage whose phone held the only evidence of what had been done to her, evidence a court would later need, recovered quietly and copied to a drive and handed back without a single question asked, because Tasha had taken one look at the woman's face and understood that some repairs are not about the device. He found, the deeper he dug, a 6-year ledger of mercy run out of a kitchen by a woman who had never once charged what the work was worth, and he found something else, the thing that finally told him a check was an insult. He found the notebook. Not literally, not yet, but he found out about it. From Malik, in a conversation Gerald engineered to look like a coincidence at the hardware store where the boy worked weekends. He found out that the woman who had saved his daughter's voice had wanted to be an engineer, had been 2 years into it, had walked away to take care of her own dying mother, the way Gerald had not had to walk away from anything because Gerald had money, and money is the thing that turns a catastrophe into an inconvenience. And the absence of it is the thing that turns an inconvenience into the end of a dream. He found out that she still had the notebook. He found out that she told her son she had the college money handled. And he did the math. The way she did the math on Sunday nights, and he understood that she did not. This is the part where you expect him to swoop in. He didn't. Not yet. Because Gerald had realized something that the easy version of this story never reaches, which is that the worst thing he could do to a woman with that much dignity was to hand her charity dressed up as gratitude. He had watched her refuse to be impressed by his suit. He had watched her tell him the truth when everyone else had sold him comfort. He understood, dimly at first, and then completely, that what this woman had was not a cash flow problem. What she had was a credential she had been denied, and a market that had been hiding her, and a company, his company, that had built its entire repair business on the premise that people like her did not exist, could not exist, that the only safe hands were the company's own hands behind the company's own counters, and that a woman at a kitchen table with $9 screwdrivers was a liability to be warned away from, never a resource to be recognized. Gerald sat with that for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, while Tasha fixed his phone and 40 other phones and counted $1,190 on a Sunday night and felt the August deadline coming like weather. He picked up the repaired phone on Thursday as promised, and he paid her $90, and he added a $100 tip that she tried to refuse and he insisted on, and that was the only money he gave her, on purpose, because he had decided to do something harder than writing a check, and slower, and he was not sure it would work. He went to war with his own company, quietly. At first, then not quietly at all. It started in a meeting Tasha never saw on the 41st floor of the glass tower where Gerald sat across from people who outranked him and proposed something they did not want to hear. He proposed that the company had a problem, and that the problem was that it had spent a decade telling underserved neighborhoods that their phones could only be safely repaired by the company, at company prices, at company counters, while independent repairers, skilled ones, trustworthy ones, were treated as threats and starved of parts and warranties and recognition. He proposed that this was not only wrong but stupid, that it was leaving the most loyal customers in the worst-served places feeling abandoned, and that the company had, sitting in plain sight in a neighborhood, its own reports redlined, a repair technician with a 6-year flawless record and a reputation money could not buy, and that the company should not pay her to go away. It should learn from her, it should certify her, it should build a program around people like her and let her run the part of it that mattered. The man across the table from him, a vice president named Hollis who had spent the meeting checking his watch, said the thing Gerald had known someone would say. He said the liability was unmanageable. He said that the moment the company certified an outside repairer, it owned every mistake that repairer made, and that one botched job on one customer's phone would cost more in a lawsuit than the entire goodwill of the program was worth. He said it the way men say things they have decided not to think too hard about, and Gerald let him finish. And then Gerald slid a single sheet of paper across the polished table. On it was a number. 4,000 and changed, the count of phones Tasha had repaired in 6 years, and beside it another number, the count of irreplaceable files she had lost in all that time, which was 0, and beside that the company's own internal figure for the same metric at its own certified counters, which was not 0, was in fact embarrassing. And Gerald watched Hollis read it and watched Hollis understand that the liability argument had just been turned around and aimed back at him. They told him no anyway. They told him no in the polite institutional way. That means we have heard you, and we will now wait for you to stop. And Gerald, who had 11 months until his pension vested in a daughter's voice in 3 places now and nothing left to be afraid of, did not stop. While that fight ground on in rooms she would never enter, Tasha's August was arriving. It was the 3rd week of July. The coffee can held $1,300. She had finally told Malik the truth on a Tuesday night because the lie had become heavier than the shame, and she had watched her son, 18 years old, do the thing she had raised him to do and the thing that broke her heart, which was to tell her it was fine, that he would defer a year, that he would work and they would save, and he would go next fall. He said it like it cost him nothing. It cost him everything, and she knew it. And she sat at the table after he went to bed and put her face in her hands over a phone she was halfway through, fixing for somebody else, and for the first time in 6 years, the woman who fixed the things nobody else could fix could not see a way to fix the only thing that mattered. The way he had said it was the part she could not stop replaying. They had been at the table, the same table, the lamp between them, and she had laid it out plainly, because Malik was not a child you could soften things for. He had never been that kind of child. She had told him the deposit was $4,200 and that she had 13, and she had watched him do the arithmetic she had been doing on Sunday nights, and she had watched his face decide in about 4 seconds to protect her. He had reached across the table and put his hand over hers, the boy's hand that had rewired the lamp at 9, now bigger than her own, and he had said a year was nothing, that engineers were patient people, that he would get a job at the hardware store full-time and they would have it by spring. He had smiled when he said it. That was the cruelty of it, that he had smiled the same way she smiled, at the people whose phones she fixed for free so they would not feel carried. Her son had learned to do it from her. He had learned to make a sacrifice look like a preference. And she sat there long after his door closed and understood that she had taught him too well, and that there is no harder thing in the world than to watch your own kindness handed back to you by a child who learned it watching you go without. The next morning she opened her door to a knock, and it was Gerald, and he was not holding a phone. He was holding a folder, and behind him, parked at the curb where her neighbors could see it, was not the luxury car from before, but a plain sedan, because he had thought about that too, and he had thought about all of it, and what he said when she opened the door was not, "Thank you," and "was not here" is a check. What he said was, "I need 91 seconds of your time, the same 91 seconds you gave me, then you can throw me out." She let him in. He sat in Malik's chair. He opened the folder. What was in the folder was a job. Not charity. A job with a title on it, Regional Repair Operations Lead, with a salary printed in a font that costs money, with a number on it that made the $4,200 look like what it was, which was a rounding error in a life she had been denied. Gerald did not lead with a number, though, because he had learned in her own kitchen that leading with a number was how you insulted a person like Tasha Reed. He led with the truth. He told her about the meeting, and the no, and the second meeting, and the second no, and the thing he had finally done, which was to go over their heads to a person at the very top who had lost someone too, and to play, with permission, he had agonized over asking for 91 seconds of his daughter's voice, and to say, "This is what an independent repair tech in a red-lined neighborhood saved when your certified counters told me it was gone." He told her that the company had finally, slowly, the way large things turn, said yes, that there would be a program, that it would certify skilled independent repairers, supply them with real parts and real training and real standing in the neighborhoods the company had spent 10 years driving past, and that he could not in good conscience, build it without the person who had shown him it was needed, and that he was not offering her the job because she had saved his daughter's voice. He was offering her the job because she was, by a margin that embarrassed the company's own technicians, the best they had ever measured. And the data did not care about her kitchen table or her missing degree or her zip code. The data only cared that in 6 years and 4,000 phones, she had never lost a photograph, and never lost a memo, and never lost a single irreplaceable thing entrusted to her hands. Tasha did not say anything for a long time. She was looking at the folder the way she had once looked at his phone, assessing it, turning it under the lamp of her attention, checking it for the swollen place where the real problem hides. "Why are you really here?" she said finally. "The truth. You came here once for 91 seconds. You got them. You paid me. You tipped me too much. You could have walked away clean. Why didn't you?" Gerald was quiet. Then he told her the last true thing, the one he had not planned to say. "Because my daughter recorded that memo to tell me she wasn't afraid," he said. "And she wasn't. She'd made her peace. The part she was worried about was me. She spent her last 91 seconds on this earth worried that I'd spend the rest of mine being the man I'd been, the man who drove past places like this street and felt nothing, the man who built a wall between the company's hands and everyone else's hands and called it quality control." He looked at the table, at the lamp, at the 9-year-old's wiring. "You saved her voice. The least I can do is let it change me. This is me. Changed. It's not charity. It's the thing she asked me for, and I can't do it without you." There is a version of this where Tasha says yes through her tears and the music swells. That is not quite what happened because Tasha Reed had not survived 20 years of the official world failing her by saying yes to the first folder a wealthy man set on her table. She read every page. She asked Gerald to leave it with her, the way he had once left a phone, and she told him she would text him when it was safe. He almost laughed. He left. And for 3 days she did what she did to every device that came to her, which was to take it apart and find out whether it was honest. And she called the number on the letterhead and asked hard questions, and she found out that the program was real, that the salary was real, that it was not a title with no power behind it, that she would actually run the certification of repairers in 9 cities, and that the first city would be her own. She found out it was true, and on the 4th day she texted him a single line. "It's safe. I checked it 3 times. Yes." The day Malik left for college 2 states away in an engineering program he did not have to defer, the deposit was paid out of a salary his mother had earned and not been given, and the partial scholarship covered the rest of the gap that the rest of the gap had been waiting on, and Tasha drove him to the campus in a car that ran, and helped him carry boxes up 3 flights, and stood in the doorway of a dorm room while her son looked at the city out the window with the face of a boy who could not believe his luck and did not know, would maybe never fully know, what it had cost and how close it had come and who had carried it. She did not tell him most of it. She told him some. She told him about the memo and the man in the doorway because that part was a good story and her son deserved good stories about his mother. She did not tell him about the coffee can or the $1,300 or the night she had put her face in her hands. Some repairs, you don't show the person you did them for. She had learned that from Miss Pearl 6 years and 4,000 phones ago. 2 years later, Tasha Reed sat at a different table. It was a long one in a training room in a building that had her program's name on the door, and around it sat 14 people she had certified that month. Repairers from neighborhoods that looked like hers, people who had been doing what she had done, in kitchens and garages and back rooms, treated as suspects by a world that needed them. She had supplied them with parts the company had once hoarded. She had trained them on the boards. She had taught herself in the dark. She had built out of her own 6 years of being invisible, a thing that made other invisible people visible, and she ran it the way she had run her kitchen, which is to say honestly and without ever once making a person feel small about the thing they did not yet know. One of the 14 was a woman named Renee, who had been fixing phones out of a beauty supply store for 9 years and had never told a customer her real success rate because she had not believed anyone would credit it. On the first morning of training, Renee had sat at the back with her arms folded, waiting. The way people wait when they have learned that rooms like this one are usually about to take something from them. Tasha had recognized the posture because it had been her own. She had not lectured Renee. She had simply set a dead phone on the table, the kind with the corrosion frost across the board that had nearly beaten her on Miss Pearl's first night, and she had said, "Anybody want to tell me why the rice trick won't help us here?" And Renee, before she could stop herself, had answered correctly and completely, and had looked up to find the woman who ran the whole program nodding at her like an equal, and had unfolded her arms, and had stayed unfolded for 9 cities and 4 years and counting. That was the work, not the parts and not the salaries, though those mattered. The work was the unfolding of the arms. The notebook came out of the drawer eventually. She kept it on a shelf in her office, now the one where a 23-year-old had drawn a future she had been forced to abandon, and she did not look at it with grief anymore. She looked at it the way you look at a phone you brought back from the dead. The future in that notebook had not died. It had only been waiting on a part. Gerald retired the following spring. His pension vested. The small gathering they held for him, Tasha gave a short speech, and she did not gush, because she did not have it in her to gush, and the room understood that the plainness of what she said was the highest praise she knew how to give. She said that he had come to her once with a phone he thought was about a cracked screen, and that it had turned out to be about a battery, the way these things always turn out to be about the thing underneath. She said the company had thought its problem was repair quality, and it had turned out to be about who it was willing to see. She said she was grateful, and she left it there, and the plainness of it landed harder than any speech. On her own desk in the office, with her program's name on the door, there sat a phone. An old one, 14 months past its prime by the time it reached her, and years past it now retired from service, kept under glass like a thing in a museum, which, in a way, it was. It was Gerald's. He had given it to her the day she said yes, the actual phone, with the actual 91 seconds still living on it in 3 places, and she kept it on her desk, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of the only thing she had ever really known how to do, which was to refuse to let the irreplaceable thing be lost while it was in her hands. Sometimes, late after everyone had gone, she would pick it up, the way she picked up every phone, with both hands, gently. The way you hold something that matters to the person it belongs to. The glass case had a small brass clasp, and she would open it slowly, and she would hold the old phone in her palm and feel how light it was, how ordinary. This object that had carried 91 seconds across the worst year of a stranger's life and had nearly let them go. And she would think about a kitchen table and a lamp a 9-year-old had rewired, and a coffee can on a refrigerator, and a man who had sat in his car for 11 minutes because he was afraid of the only thing brave enough to change him. She would think about Miss Pearl and Curtis and Renee unfolding her arms, and a fat brown baby in a yellow onesie laughing at 1 in the morning. And she would set the phone back down on the glass, screen up, the way she set down everything she had ever saved, and close the clasp, and turn off the light. If somebody once fixed the thing the whole world told you was beyond fixing, I hope you found a way to tell them what it meant. Sit with that for a second, then tell me in a word who that person was for you. And if this one reached you, there's another waiting, about a school cafeteria worker who fed a hungry boy for free for 9 years and never knew whose son he was.